Hello, this is Jason Walters, and welcome to the IPR Game Room. So I'm back. I went on a vacation to the Bay Area to see family. That was very nice, though, as my friend and fellow game designer Jason Sayedek pointed out to me, I seemed all too happy to come back to the Black Rock Desert and slither back into my still suit and get out of the strange civilian garb I have to wear in the outside world. Today we'll be talking about Greg Stoltz, or Stoltzy. I'm going to say Stoltzy. Sorry, Greg, I don't actually know how your last name's pronounced. Greg Stoltzy's $1 Million Soulmate. So for those of you who are not familiar with Greg Stoltzy's work, he is a very prolific, a very, let's say, OG, original game designer, sort of game designer. He's been around a long time. His works include Rain, which I believe is coming out in a second edition from Atomic Overmind Press, Dinosaurs in Space, and many, many, many other things too numerous to mention. He is also a prolific author of crowd-funded free fiction, which you can find on his website, which we will include a link to below. So Greg's most recent book, at least to come into Indie Press Revolution, is $1 Million Soulmate, which is a two-person role-playing game that examines a romance which may or may not be toxic and doomed between a millionaire and their soulmate, which they have hired and paid a high-end company to use an algorithm to find. So presumably, the person playing the soulmate is, in fact, the perfect match for the person playing the millionaire. Greg's basic idea he's working off of comes from C.S. Lewis's idea of both the angelic and demonic love. That relationships can be either angelically defined and bring out the best in people, or they can be demonic and bring out the worst in people. But they are love either way. And as Greg points out in the book, C.S. Lewis would know in that he spent much of his adult life having an out-of-wedlock relationship with his dead friend's mom. So when it comes to these things, and from my reading of Lewis's biographies, I'd go with demonic with this one. But anyhow, Lewis knew his doomed love pretty well. The basic idea of the game is that you help create each other's characters. There's two players. There's 6 questions about each character, and you answer 3 about your own character, and the other player answers 3 about your own character. You do this for each other in a series of steps that establishes kind of pretty well who your characters are. I should point out this is a fairly tense and intense game. Like a bunch of Greg's games, it's played in a series of sequences, some of which are set. For example, $1 Million Soulmate always ends at a scene in the boathouse, because Greg freely admits he imagines if you're a millionaire, you have a boathouse. And it always begins with a first date. This is a kind of a running theme in some of Greg's games. But the rest are fleshed out in a series of dates under which the two characters have romantic adventures or misadventures and get to know each other better. I should take a moment and point out that this is not actually a very lighthearted game. For one thing, the author doesn't particularly like the idea of millionaires at all. Or points out that you might not like the idea of millionaires very much. So there is inherently built into it between the soulmate, who is most certainly not a millionaire, and the millionaire who has sought out the soulmate, like immediately a power imbalance of some sort right there. As the game progresses, there are a variety of die rolls and points built up. And in the final scene, you total up a certain number of points you've acquired throughout the game. If the total is negative, is a negative number, then you get a demonic romance. If it's a positive number, you get an angelic romance. And then depending on who has the most points as the scenes play out throughout the game, you get to determine who will sort of decide how the final scene in the boathouse goes. And that is the game in its essence, though of course I'm grossly abbreviating all the things that go on in the game. It's a very interesting work. It's amusing in many points. In his sample game, the players, one of the players pauses in the sample game to ask the other players if really he wouldn't much rather be playing something like Unknown Armies or A Dirty World than this very intense, tense game of relationship, at which point the other player says no, and they proceed playing the game in the sample game. I too agree that I would much rather play this than Unknown Armies, but hey, that's just me. In short, it is a very interesting little game, as you can see. It's yet another one of this number of sort of zine pamphlet-sized games we've been getting here at IPR lately. Check it out. It's available here at IPR in physical electronic form, and follow us on the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our newsletter. And remember, gamers, when you're spending an enormous sum of money to track down your perfect soulmate, you may or may not want to tell them that on the first date.